Precisely, Dr. Wyman, precisely. That's why you don't put fluoride in the drinking water, because the primary benefit is topical. And this was confirmed by the Center for Disease Control in 1999. They said, we used to think that to protect children's teeth, they had to swallow the fluoride before their teeth had erupted into the gums, that you swallow the fluoride to build up the fluoride in the enamel, and so when the teeth are in the mouth, they're more resistant to the acid attack by acids produced by bacteria converting sugar to acids. That was the theory. They said, whoops, after 50 years, I'm sorry, we were wrong. The predominant action of fluoride is topical. Well, now it's common sense, isn't it? So why swallow fluoride and expose every tissue of the body to a toxic substance when, if you want it, you can brush it on your teeth and spit it out? Now, I haven't used fluoridated toothpaste for 16 years, so I'm not advocating fluoridated toothpaste, but give me a choice between fluoridating the country's water supply and persuading people to use fluoridated toothpaste. I know which side I'd come down on. The fluoridated toothpaste. Later on I'll explain, I think, what there are better ways of doing it.
What about dental fluorosis? You're saying that fluoridation topically has a benefit, but the research I've seen is that that's not true either.
Well, there's argument about whether the benefit of, and you're probably familiar with the article in Langmuir, where they estimate that the thickness of the calcium fluoride formed is so thin it's not going to protect anything for very long. But I'd rather just leave that for the moment. But not only does it make more sense to brush it on your teeth and not swallow it, but it doesn't make sense now to force fluoride onto people that don't want it. I mean, it's not as if this is a contagious disease. It's not as if this is like treating tuberculosis or smallpox or something. Some disease is suddenly breaking out throughout the country. How much? Okay, let's speed up. So, fluoridation poses unacceptable risks. If you want to see what those risks are, I urge you to get this report. You can get it online. The National Research Council. One of the things that they talk about is that the fluoride damages the growing tooth cells, causing this condition called dental fluorosis. But the key question is, when it's doing this, which we don't deny, no one denies that fluoride causes dental fluorosis, what's it doing to the other tissues in the body? And this is what Dr. Arvid Carlsson said. He led the successful campaign against fluoridation in Sweden. He says, one wonders what an increase in exposure to fluoride, such as occurs in bottle-fed infants, may mean for the development of the brain and the other organs. Now, he said that in 1978, and it's amazingly how prophetic it was. This is what the National Research Council said about fluoride in the brain. It is apparent that fluorides have the ability to interfere with the functions of the brain. As of January of this year, there are now 36 published studies from China, Iran, India, and Mexico indicating that fairly modest exposure to fluoride lowers IQ in children. The study that I particularly am interested in is a study by Zhang, because I actually went to China to the two villages he studied. One village had less than 0.7 parts per million of fluoride in well water, naturally occurring, and the other village had between 2.5 and 4.5 parts per million. Now, he controlled for lead exposure and iodine intake, both of which could interfere with IQ. He found a drop of 5 to 10 IQ points across the whole age range. He found the whole IQ curve was shifted over. This is for males. So you see there's a reduction in the number of geniuses in that society, or very bright kids, and an increase in the number of mentally handicapped. Shifted the whole curve over. Now, Zhang estimated that the threshold for lowering of IQ, taking all his data points, was 1.9 parts per million. And in my view, this offers no adequate margin of safety to protect all American children from two things: the range of doses that we can anticipate in an American population, and the range of sensitivity to fluoride that we can anticipate in a large population of the United States. And don't forget, we've got to protect everyone. If we are staff to put a toxic substance in the drinking water, we've got to be confident that we can protect everybody from harm. Not the average kid, but everyone. Now, a child drinking 2 liters of water, 1 part per million, will get a higher dose. 1 part per million is 1 milligram per liter, so they would be getting 2 milligrams a day. Then one of those Chinese children drinking 1 liter of water at 1.9 parts per million, they would be getting 1.9 milligrams per day. So you can see the concentrations may be different, but the doses overlap. The high water drinkers in the low fluoride concentration can get more fluoride than the low the kids drinking lower levels of water. So there's an overlap. So we don't protect for the range of exposure. Now, to protect the most sensitive person in a large population, we normally divide the dose that causes harm by 10. The lowest dose. You look for the lowest dose that causes harm and divide by 10 to protect everyone, the most sensitive. This is called intraspecies variation. It's a standard factor used in risk assessment. Now, what dose were the Chinese children getting at 1.9 parts per million? Well, if they drank half a liter of water, they were getting 0.95 milligrams per day. If they drank 1 liter of water, 1.9. They were drinking 2 liters of water, getting 3.8 milligrams per day. So now, I'm going to apply that safety factor to protect all our American kids. We divide by 10. And the safe dose, depending on how much water these kids were drinking, the safe dose would range from 0.095 to 0.38 milligrams per day. That's simply what those Chinese kids were getting divided by 10. Now, even if we use the highest number there of 0.38 milligrams per day, children in America would only have to drink 400 milliliters or about 2 glasses of water at 1 part per million to exceed this dose. So there's no way that if that result from Zhang is accurate, if they did a good job, and there's no reason to doubt they did, then we are not protecting our kids in the United States drinking fluoridated water at 1 part per million.
Professor,
Yes.
you made a mention of Joseph Goebbels, and I found that very interesting since fluoride and chlorine emanated out of 1930s German operations and programs that was termed Lebensraum. And most anybody can research this term. In German it means living room, but the program had much further and deeper implications.
Well, I wouldn't go there for 2 reasons. Number one, my wife and I did our utmost to try to track down these stories about Nazis using fluoride. And we couldn't find them. We asked the Wiesenthal Foundation that tracks down Nazi criminals. We thought if anybody would know about it, they would.
I can provide you first-hand information.
Well, I've only seen one reference, so whether it's the same.
I
No
doubt-
historian would be satisfied with one reference. But anyway, there's another reason. There's another reason not to dwell on this issue. It's a fun thing to investigate, to think about, to read about, like the Kennedy assassination. It's very enjoyable. However, in terms of winning this battle against fluoridated water, we have them on the ropes with the science. We have 36 IQ studies. We don't need what Adolf Hitler did. If you use that, it's very insulting to thousands of dentists who truly believe that they are doing good things for children with fluoridation. And we don't want to drive them away. We want them to read the science. We want them to listen to our arguments on the science and not to give them an excuse to dismiss us as a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists, which is exactly what they did in the 50s when the John Birch Society got hold of this, and it was all an anti-communist thing and so on. So let's stick to the science. Leave the rest for fun. The study was published, in last year, July of last year, the Harvard team, 2 from Harvard, Choi and Philip Ramgini, who's well-known epidemiologist, done his work on mercury, did a meta-analysis of 27 of these studies. comparing IQ for high fluoride villages versus low. It was published in a very important journal, Environmental Health Perspectives, published by the National Institute of Environmental Health Studies. They found that 26 of the 27 studies found a lower IQ in the high fluoride village versus the low fluoride. On average, it was a 7 IQ point deficit. They said that further investigations of this were a high research priority. But fluoridating countries are not doing these studies. The National Research Council gave a high priority to many studies. They haven't been done in the 7 years since that report was published. What the proponents are doing is to use the absence of study as an indicator of the absence of harm, which of course it is not. If you don't look, you don't find. And here, to give you an example, an absurd example, if you like, is Dr. Peter Cooney, the Chief Dental Officer in Canada, told an audience in Dryden, Ontario, and I was there when he said it. He said, "I walked down your high street today and I didn't see anyone growing horns, and you've been fluoridated for 40 years. So it gives you some idea of what the Canadian research program is like. This is very bad science. Now, promoters of fluoridation have argued that this Harvard meta-analysis is not relevant to fluoridated communities because the concentrations of fluoride in the high fluoride village were very high. Well, I invite you to look at the data coming up. So I won't go through this, but let's look at the data. Here are all the studies. Here are the levels of fluoride in the high fluoride village. 4.5, 0.88, 2.1 to 7.6, 1.8, 2.97, 1.8 to 2.69, 1 to 8.6, 2 to 11, 3.15, 2.9, 2.97, 0.57 to 4.5, 2.5, 1.66, 1.14, 3.8, 2.38. There is no adequate margin of safety for most of those concentrations if you went through the same calculations I gave you earlier. Now, this is what one Kansas newspaper reported during the middle of the referendum in Wichita. Harvard University scientists say that Wichita voters shouldn't depend on a research study they compiled to decide whether to put fluoride in the city's drinking water to fight tooth decay. While the studies the Harvard team reviewed did indicate that very high levels of fluoride could be linked to lower IQs among school children, the data is not particularly applicable here because it came from foreign sources where fluoride levels are multiple times higher than they are in America tap water. First of all, when you start talking about how much higher the concentrations are, you're missing a critical difference between concentration and dose. Remember? Secondly, this is what another paper said. But the study's authors acknowledged that their report, actually a study of other studies, showed slightly lower IQ levels in kids who drank water with fluoride levels 10 times what is found in US water supplies. This is what Grandjean, the author, responded. Neither newspaper checked their information with the authors, even though statements were attributed to them. They went on to say, on average, the children with higher fluoride exposures showed poorer intelligence test performance. The high exposures generally exceeded the concentrations normally occurring in fluoridated drinking waters, but only 4 of 27 studies reached an excess of 10-fold, and clear difference in IQ were found at much lower exposures. Chemical brain drain should not be disregarded. The average IQ deficit in children exposed to increased levels of fluoride in drinking water was found to correspond to about 7 points, a sizable difference. To which extent this risk applies to fluoridation in Wichita or Portland or San Francisco or elsewhere is uncertain, but definitely deserves concern. Of course, the election has already been taking place in Wichita. It's coming up in Portland. And this is what he says. Fluoride seems to fit in with lead, mercury, and other poisons that cause chemical brain drain. The effect of each toxin may seem small, but the combined damage on a population scale can be serious, especially because the brain power of the next generation is crucial to all of us. And I want to show you a few pictures to illustrate this, okay? This is the normal distribution, the bell-shaped curve for IQ.